into our next presentation, which is the Ask Auntie and Ask Uncle. So I wanted to welcome our elder Gerry back, and as well as Sarain, Squakin, and Naomi Bob from Indigenous Youth Wellness. So if you wanted to come on screen. So I will let you introduce yourselves for this conversation, but we really thought that it was important to host a conversation today, especially on the first day, just defining family, kinship, and the relationship in our communities to our aunties and our uncles. So Naomi, if you want to introduce yourself, we can start with you.
That sounds great. Thank you, Savannah. I native, good morning. Infape Naomi Bob, Tunitsan Snatnawas, Ait Nishkwan Konas Elemnalu. I said, good morning. My name is indeed Naomi. My family is from Snatnawas or Nanu's Nation over on Vancouver Island. And I was born and raised here in East Van in the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. And I do have family from host nations here as well. So I've been very lucky to be raised safely here. I also said, it is really good to see you. So I've been learning how to introduce myself, and I figured I'd add that in today. Anyways, I'll pass it off to Sarain.
Why Haswell East West Palpawicha Knintil Simpington. Hello, good day. My name is Sarain. My ancestral name Kalpawicha is Butterfly, and this is my home, Penticton. I come from the Okanagan Nation, and I'm a CU. I've been on the Indigenous Wellness team for about a year and a half, and I look forward to hosting this panel with this great crew. I'll pass it off to Gerry.
Hello, it's just so good to be here today with my wonderful, don't even know what to call them, my nieces or my co-workers. You know, I'm from, my name is, at my home, they call me Patse, or it's one of my names, and the other one when I'm in Vancouver is Sahilthit. But my colonized name is Gerald Douglas Andrew Oldman. And I'm originally from a small community called Cha Laugh, which means by the lake. But I'm now coming to you all the way from Brandon, Manitoba. I've been teasing people and telling them I'm a settler in Brandon, Manitoba, a Statlium settler. But actually I'm an immigrant. I migrated this way. So I'm so happy to be here and to share with my co-panelists.
Thank you, everyone. I guess to start off our conversation today, we can start with the question, what does it mean to be an auntie, or what does it mean to be an uncle in our community? And through this conversation, I really hope that we can collaborate. So maybe if you wanted to go one after the other, or just raise your hand when you're ready to answer, just so that we all have the chance to share. But I think that there is so much to cover, and if we don't cover it all during this conversation, that's totally fine. I think just really taking the time to reflect and think about what being an auntie or uncle or mentor in our communities means to us is really important, and an important message to share with the youth and everyone that's tuning in right now. So again, what does it mean to be an auntie or an uncle or mentor in our communities? Who would like to start?
I can start if you'd like. I guess I just wanted to start with like a little story. Not too long ago, actually, this was only in the last couple of years, I was spending some time with one of my nephews, Thomas. He's 11 now, and so I guess he's probably like around 10 maybe. But we were playing outside and he had scooters. So he was showing me his really funky like electric scooter, and he gave me like a, old school scooter. So scootering along, and then I said, oh, let's turn down that street and let's keep going further in the neighborhood. And this is like near his mom's house. And he was like, no, like my mom said we can't, like I can't leave the street from where she can see me. And I was like, oh no. And then I thought about it and I was like, no, it's okay, I'm your auntie. And that was like a good reminder in the moment that I am an auntie. So it's like, for me, being an auntie, it's a mixture of being kind of like a sister and a mom together, where you play and you have a totally different role with them than their mom, but you still are there to ensure their safety and to check and make sure that they are listening to their parents, their mom, their guardians. So that was like a funny story that I just thought of, that kind of symbolizes being an auntie to me, is realizing I'm not a kid anymore. I'm actually one of the adults.
I guess I'll hop on. What it means to be an auntie. So I became an auntie when I was 8 years old, and classic Native story. And what it means to be an auntie at that age, I think just being present. One thing I've noticed is just my family really, we love to connect either through dinner or like going out on the land. So I do my best by trying to connect with my nieces and nephews and having that relationship with them, and also making sure that they're listening to their parents, because I definitely don't want them to not do that, but also realizing there's limitations as an auntie. And also some things are like, with the candy, like that's between you and me, you know? But I guess my biggest thing is a connection between my nieces and nephews. I do love playing with them, either snowboarding down Apex or kind of just playing at the park and playing weird boss battles with my nephew. He really likes video games. And I think just having that sense of support, and also like a different way of, I like opening their eyes to a different way of seeing the world. So it's not just black and white, and talking to them like they are like an adult, and just saying like, hey, what do you think? And them kind of being like, oh, I don't know, I never really had the option before, you know? So just testing out those sort of things of creating independence between themselves. So yeah, that's how I would describe being an aunt.
I guess I can describe being an uncle by, first off, by describing myself being a nephew. You know, I was so lucky that I had like my one of my granduncles came to live with us after he got to be an old elder. You know, so he's having a hard time to move around, and he come to live with us, and the relatives, I guess you could say, shared him, because they would, you know, a different family would take him in after a certain while. My mom took him in because that was her uncle. And he's like my granduncle, and I could remember him teaching me how to work around bare paw snowshoes, because I'm from the mountains, so we had these bare paw snowshoes. But he was so patient with me, you know, and I guess that real feeling of family, like I belong to him in a way, not this ownership belonging, but that we're one, we're the same. And to have that feeling of course, I couldn't feel it at that time. You know, here's this elder, you know, teaching me around this, and he'd make me do it over and over again and get it right, you know, so. But he was a good teacher. He was patient with me. And then my other uncles, you know, would introduce me to ceremony and training. They called it Kwazanchut, how to train my mind, my body, and my spirit. So, and I think back just to this now today, I thought, well, to be an uncle, first off, I learned how to be a nephew, you know, and then my aunties were, of course, make sure I'm fed. You know, I go see my Auntie Amelia, and she'd always have homemade bread and good food, you know. That real kindness in her voice, that timbre of kindness, is all I can say. I guess it's not like really soft where I can barely hear her, but it was like, and I think about it like I'd say today, her voice is like flower petals, you know, and she'd talk to me and feed me. You know, it just like when I was with my auntie, it wasn't like a sit down, I'm going to tell you something, nephew. It was more like feed me, and then I could, when I'm eating, and she would talk to me. You know, so it was. I started to learn to be an uncle, when I'm talking about my uncles and aunties, it feels like I got a long way to go. You know, I can't help but the feeling because of the way they were with me. You know, yeah. So that's my experience with uncles and aunties.
And the next question is, what does it mean to be a nephew or a niece and to have that relationship?
I can start. So I grew up like with a single mom, and I think that really helped me connect to my aunties and uncles a lot more because I was a community child, either staying with an auntie or an uncle. And I think what it means to be like a niece, I think just being open to new teachings. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to have many teachers in my life, either be aunties, uncles, or people in the community. And I think being open to different opportunities, and then also kind of reminding your auntie and uncle what you need too, right? Like, because it's explaining what you need as like a niece or nephew, but also kind of being open to what they have to share to you. So I think kind of like a two-way street sort of thing. And always just having fun. Like, I think as a niece, I always try to have fun. I think as an aunt too. I don't know. I just like to have fun.
Yeah, for me it was to be a good nephew. I got to listen. You know, actually, one of my I guess you could say one of my older brothers told me, when uncle tells you something, you listen. You don't say I know already or anything like that, because he might not talk to you again. Just sit there and listen. Sort of nod and let them know you're listening. So because when my uncles took time to teach me, if I didn't listen, they wouldn't teach me. So it's an important lesson, I think, is to when the auntie or uncle is talking to you, is to listen and acknowledge them as thank you, uncle. Say thank you, uncle, or thank you, auntie. You know, so that's being a good nephew to me. Like I learned that, you know, and because there's goodness comes back when I started saying that to my uncles and aunties, to let them know I'm listening.
I agree. And I think that the best lesson that I was taught growing up was that to go and find ways to help. And that was one of the best ways to learn how to be a niece as well as how to be an auntie, is to find a way to go and help my aunties. And they're always doing something. And I bet you anything, you might not even need to ask, they will tell you what they need you to help with. So that looks like waking up and getting yourself ready and going and seeing what they're already up to and seeing how you can support them. If it means helping them make breakfast, if it means, for me, one of my aunties is Kat Norris. She's a huge organizer here in the downtown east side, and she's been working here for over 40 years. And I love to see what ways I can show up for her at different events, because I get to learn how she loves an entire community as an auntie, and it's a beautiful experience. I get to see the way that she weaves people together and gives people roles, gives people a sense of belonging together, and that auntie kind of role extends beyond just someone who is, she is my dad's sister, but that it can extend beyond that. And so that can be even finding different aunties and uncles that are safe to work with, and just asking what they need help with, or just see what they're doing and just help them. If they're carrying groceries that are really heavy, maybe you can help them carry it back to their car with them, and then ask about their day. Or for me, it was always helping with bannock or fire bread, which is a fun one because it means you get to get your hands messy and hopefully learn their secret recipe, which is always one of my secrets of why I love helping my auntie cat, because she is the best fry bread and I have not been able to recreate it since, or yet, I should say. But yeah, just showing up, seeing where I can support and help, and then you get to spend time together. And sometimes that's when I hear the funniest stories, or I hear different teachings that they want to share with me. And like Gerry said, even if they're repeating things to you, that's a sign of love, that they really want you to learn this. They really want to gift you with teachings that help them, guide them. So sometimes I'll hear the same story, sometimes I'll hear the same teaching, and I'm always open to hearing it, because I think it takes many times of hearing something before you start to like remember it. And then practicing it on your own is also a totally different step too. But yeah, I think for me, being a niece means getting to go and just work next to my aunties and seeing what they do, because they're amazing and they're people I want to model myself after. And I think that's why I hesitate to call myself an auntie sometimes. Like you're saying, Gerry, like the aunties that I have to look up to are so incredibly inspiring and intelligent and beautiful and kind. And it feels almost like, I don't know, like I get nervous to call myself an auntie, but I have to remember that I am an auntie, that I have people in my life that I love and care for, and to be okay stepping into that role with them. So for me, being a niece is just learning, opening your mind and learning and helping. And that looks like cleaning dishes and sweeping the floor and doing all of that stuff. But I promise you it's worth it.
Yeah, Naomi, like when you said that like receiving the same story over and over again is a sign of love, because it's a gift from your auntie or from your loved one. That really resonated with me, because I've heard the same stories over and over again from my loved ones. So I just wanted to ask all of you, like, what is a beautiful memory or a beautiful gift that you've received that you can remember from an auntie or an uncle or community member? I'm sure there's many. I know it's a hard question.
Okay, I'll start off. Mine was, and I've shared it with my little team here, is my uncle on my dad's side. He worked all his life on a railroad, you know, and he got to be a foreman, and he's just a hard worker. They're all hard workers, my uncles. And, get up early in the morning, you know, go out and work, never complain. Tell me things like, don't stand with your hands in your pocket, sit like an eagle, sit up straight, don't be a slouch. Anyway, he came to me one day and he said, yeah, I built a sweat lodge down by the lake. He says, you want to come? I says, oh yeah, uncle, I'll be there. So I went down that night with him, and I remember I got there and I was waiting. He wasn't there yet. And then I hear him coming down the trail, and he's coming down and he's got a great big armful of fir boughs, branches off the fir tree, and they're all about that long. Just a great big, he's actually got them, a rope tied around him, carrying them on his back. And he says, okay, we'll put them in the sweat lodge. He says, you put them in. And my dad taught me how to put them in a tent. So I just put them in, like when we went camping, that's what we used to use, our mattress was the fir boughs. So I said, okay, uncle, I'll do that. And then I was doing that, and then he was making the fire, heating up the rocks. I got inside all fixed up, and then the fire, we're waiting, and then we went in. It was my very first time. He says, it's gonna get hot enough for you. I says, okay, uncle. And he says, if it gets really too hot for you, just put your head by the ground because it's coolest down by the ground. I says, okay, uncle. Anyway, he started. As this got so hot, my ears were burning, my toes were burning, and I was laying on the ground, trying not to whimper, and didn't want to think, no guys want to let other people think you're weak. So I said, I'm going to tough this out. And I was there, and I was just really hot. And I could hear him blowing on his elbows and his knees because he was getting arthritis. He was doctoring himself. He says, okay, nephew. And he opened the door and he says, you go in the lake and go under 4 times. So I went in the lake. There was ice on the edge of the lake. Holy cow, I went running and jumped over the ice and jumped the lake. I was so hot. The water felt so good, it felt like silk going over my body. And I went under. And I stood up on the beach there. It was a clear winter night, snow and ice. And I was looking up at the sky and I could see the Milky Way and all the stars. And I had that, what they call grounded moment, where I just felt one with the earth. I felt one with life, I guess. And I was standing there looking up and it just felt so good. And I said to my uncle, I said, Uncle, you mean I've been drinking and drugging all these years to feel good and I could have been doing this? He says, yes, nephew. And, so till this day, I'm in love with the Sweat Lodge because of my uncle. So that's one of the stories of my uncle and what he gave me that I still carry today. And it became part of my life. So that was, I know I must have been 25 years old or something like that, and I'm 72 now, and I'm still doing that every week from my uncle.
Thank you for sharing that story, Gerry. Just seeing the joy on your face when you're telling us these stories and sharing these gifts with us is so beautiful. And I'm just so grateful to, have this conversation and also to call you an uncle, and Naomi and Sarain, to call you coworkers and aunties. I'm learning so much from you every day. So if you two wanted to share as well, what is a beautiful lesson that you carry with you from your loved ones?
Thank you, Savannah. Yeah, it's definitely so amazing to be on this team with such beautiful people. So, Gerry, your story, it made me think about, I was trying to sit here and think about like a specific gift or a specific story from my aunties or uncles. And I have to say that it's just like it's all of it together, like what that means for me, because every story that my aunties share with me, whether it be their own life story or other stories to help teach me, everything that they have shared with me has really made me know who I am and my identity. So I'd have to say that my gift from my aunties has always been and always will be my identity, because they teach me how to be in this world, how to be an auntie, how to be Hwamach, how to be Indigenous from where we're from, and learning about their journey and how they learned how to be in this world as Hwamach, as Indigenous people, and also as women. And what that taught me was that there, so many struggles, so many things that they've had to combat, to overcome, and yet they always do it with a smile and a laugh and with a curious mind. And so I guess for me, it really is my identity, because they teach me about my family. I get to hear all of the stories about my family, be it like, across the spectrum of human emotion. There is many, many stories about my family, and it's such a beautiful thing to learn, because it means who I am as Naomi, as their niece, as Thomas's auntie, and I get to learn about my family, and also just seeing myself reflected in my family is a huge way I ground myself in my identity. I am a natural night owl. I love being up at night. I love coffee. Everyone on my team knows how much I love my coffee. And learning that, like, my uncle, I was talking to him on the phone one night, and I said, we don't really have like a family, like we don't come from a clan like, what's our, like, everyone has these beautiful crests. I was like asking him about this, and he was like, well, first of all, you know, we don't follow the clan system because we consider ourselves of all of animals, like we connect with all of them. They all have teachings for us. And he said, but you know, as a joke, if we were to choose one, he said it would be the night owl, because all of our family are night owls. We love to stay up late. We love our coffee. We love all of that. And he said, if you wanted to design a family crest, draw a night owl with a big cup of coffee. And that was such a good story, because I totally agree. And just also just to see myself reflected in my family, especially the ones that are over on the island who don't live with me over on this side of the water. To hear about just funny stories like that too, that just, I know when I'm up late tinkering away with something or weaving or doing something, I can pretty much guess that my uncle is watching a movie over on the island, because we also love our movies, or my dad is, you know, probably writing or doing something else late at night as well, or my auntie Kat is probably doing some sewing because she loves to do sewing. But just knowing that we're all kind of, you know, such similar people has also really been such a gift to learn to know who I am. Yeah.
I love that. I love like just building on that, like that family connection. I think that's one thing that I guess my aunt, I usually say my auntie because I only have one auntie on my mom's side, and I have like two uncles on my mom's side that are alive. But the one thing that I think they all taught me is like unconditional love. So I can go like long times without talking to them, just me living my own life. But every time I do see either my auntie or my uncles, like they genuinely say, I love you or love you, and like give me a hug. And you can see that they like miss the young little girl that they used to take care of, but they also see like a strong-willed young woman. And it's just, I think that unconditional love is something that I just value a lot, because it's you see it throughout my cousins, my connection with my grandma, my siblings. Like, even though we all butt heads at a lot of times, we all know that we still have each other. Like almost, I guess, like the mafia in the sense, you know, like family name is like, it means something, right? It's a bigger thing. And just knowing that, like, and knowing like my last name, Squakin, it's Squakin, that means eagling in our language. And it almost seems like carrying that name is almost like everyone in our family is under the eagle wing, which is kind of nice. Like we're all kind of a part of the bigger unit. And one teaching that my auntie has always taught me is giving without terms and conditions. Sometimes other family members can guilt trip and whatnot, but my auntie has never done that. Like she's always just given something to me, and I know that I can, that it's just a genuine gift. Whether that be laundry detergent or other little things like keychains or a cute little sweater or whatnot. Like I know it's her gift to me because she wants to gift it, and I've taken on that that teaching and kind of just started implementing that now with my nieces and nephews, just now that I actually have a career where I can buy them things, but giving them like useful things too. Like my auntie would always give me useful things. Like she would give me laundry detergent, whether I needed it or not. I knew, like, if it were hard times, I still had that one, you know? So I guess useful things, and then also just giving without terms and conditions. And overarching one for my family is unconditional love. Like, just how strong our family is makes me really value the teachings that I've received from my aunts and uncles, and also just knowing that we have that the larger unit other than just our family. Like there's our community as well. So those are my teachings from my family and community.
Thank you. I do want to mention, sorry, one second. Sorry, I couldn't hear myself. I just want to go back to how all of you are saying that there's many different ways for us to express love in our communities and in our families. But when that connection is missing, how do we restore it, or how do we go about building it or taking that first step? I know when we were doing the planning for this conversation, that was one thing that we talked about, Gerry, is how do we build these relationships in our communities and take that first step to doing so.
Yes, I I hunger to hear somebody say uncle to me. I get hungry for that, and I get hungry to say uncle or auntie. And I learned to adopt aunties and uncles because I'm what they call a traveling man. I mean, I've traveled all over the country. People call me, and I go work for them before COVID. I've been to Labrador, NWT, the Yukon, Alaska, different places to work. But I would go, and if there's an elder there, if there's a elder woman, a granny, I'd call her auntie. If there was a man, I'd call him uncle. And I go over there like a good nephew, and I'd bring them water or whatever. Hey, uncle, you want some coffee? I talk like that to them. And yeah, because it's a good feeling to be a nephew that like that. And I went to Musqueam, and I became part of their longhouse there. And people that are older than me in the longhouse, because they've been there all their life, and I just went in 2000 or something. So I have aunties up there half my age, younger than me, and I call them auntie. And it's so good to hear them. Hey, Stephen, that's a say nephew in Musqueam. Hey, Stephen, how are you doing? Oh, it just feels so good, Oh, auntie, good, 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 auntie. Well, no, auntie, I'd say that to them. Doing very good. Same with uncles. I call them, some of them are my age or younger, and I call them uncle because they're teaching me. They're teaching me some valuable lessons. So it was so good to develop uncle-auntie relationships with someone that's older than you, and let's say in drumming or basket weaving or whatever it is, you can call them auntie. And don't be shy of somebody, older than you calls you auntie or uncle. It simply means that they're very traditional and they recognize the gift that you have. So they can call you uncle or auntie. Our family trees got all messed up because of residential school, and even just giving our names, our English names now. So it's a good idea for you to start finding your family tree if you don't know it. Just a suggestion. And if your first cousin on your dad's side is older than you, and it's a guy, you can call him uncle. Or if it's a lady, and it's your first cousin and they're older than you can call them auntie. And I really recommend that, to revive this uncle auntie. Because to me, the uncle and aunties were the teachers. Because the parents were busy raising, my parents were raising 7 kids. That's a tough job, So the uncles and aunties would step in and help. My uncle would babysit us, my aunties or my granny. So it's something that it just feels so good once it starts. Like as soon as I go to Musqueam, for instance, I hear those terms, uncle and auntie, or nephew, or niece. So even when I heard Savannah just a little while ago call me uncle, oh, it felt good. My heart felt warm. It's a good feeling to be acknowledged because it's a respectful. And at this time too, I'd also say, everything we do in life, we earn it. So when we earn someone calling us uncle because of the way we treat them good. We don't hurt them. We don't hurt anybody. You know, we could be, I feel I could be uncle to anybody. That's the way I am. I don't want to hurt anybody. Yeah, so that's my little take on, you know, uncles and aunties that we need. It's something I get hungry for.
I guess I'll go next. Uh, how I build relationships as aunties and uncles. I think I usually start by like, just because I love children so much and love being an auntie, like a young auntie. I just usually start playing like with my friends' kids, like and actually playing. Like if we're playing a boss battle, like we're playing a boss battle. Like, and usually I'm the game master, which is pretty fun at times, but except for when I can't imagine something. But yeah, I guess like the one thing I realized is like building these relationships. One thing I realized, I guess, just recently is my nephew. I love being called auntie, but my nieces and nephews are so much older than kind of the average niece or nephew. So like my oldest nephew is 3 years younger than me, and then it goes 3 years, 3 years, 8 years, 8 years, and 11 years. And those are just for my siblings, not including my nieces and nephews through either cousins or friends, but they were a lot older. So I was either called like little aunties until I became like an adult, and they were kind of like, now sometimes like my nephews are really good. My nieces aren't so great with being like saying auntie, but they'll usually like I think it's like taking on that role as an auntie is like also doing the work as an auntie too. Like I'm now realizing that with my nephew here in the city is he's calling me auntie more, or even like wasa. So wasa in my language is auntie. And his mom's also saying it too, so like reinforcing it. And I think she's feeling more comfortable as me being an auntie because I'm showing up and I'm being there and I'm helping support her, and also being another support for my nephew. And so it's not even my choice as being an auntie to say like, I'm your auntie. It's kind of like, I need to do the work to be your auntie. And I think I'm really realizing that with my nephew here in the city. And then that's also kind of showing me that I need to show up for my other nieces and nephews in a different way, who aren't here in the city. And how I build those relationships are either through iMessage, like, I don't know, a little hoop game, or we'll send like snap filters or stuff like that. So that's how I build my relationship. I guess it's a lot different than like the average traditional ways, but I think it kind of breaks the ice. And then I feel like my nieces and nephews are a lot more inclined to talk to me. My niece, my second niece, she's graduating high school this year, and she's asking me a lot more questions about what it's like to graduate. And I think having that relationship beforehand of actually being there for her, and also just listening to her without judgment, and just being an open ear, I think that's how I build the relationships with my nieces and nephews. How I build it outside of my family, though, it's definitely just being a kid. And I think I'm realizing now as like an auntie, like when I was a kid, like when I was the niece, I was Cakes, but now as like an auntie, I'm Rainy. So I'm now just realizing that like Rainy is auntie and Cakes was when I was a niece. So it's funny to see that your nicknames even change as you get older. So and a lot of my nieces, nephews will be like, Rainy! And they'll just like, and then we'll just play for like the first 30 or 50 minutes that I'm there, and then like acknowledge them and do whatever like games they're playing. And yeah, and that's how I usually build my connections, as being an auntie within my community. What are yours, Naomi?
Thanks, Sarain. I think that exactly what you two have been talking about, of like creating those opportunities to create connection, I think is really what I look for, because I looked around at one point when I was an adult and realized that no one was like gonna do it for me, like set it up for me. So a few years ago, I went and visited my family over in the island, and I made the travel plans myself, and I went over and visited with them, and I realized that like all of those things that my mom and my dad used to organize to bring us over to go and sit with aunties and uncles, and like have those opportunities to like just visit, that no one was going to continue to organize them. I had to, kind of like dentist appointments. It's like, I mean, it's more fun visiting family than seeing the dentist, to be honest, but it's the same idea of like finding opportunities to organize themselves, because being completely honest, yes, it's something that my family has also struggled with, is the lack of connection because of many things that have happened in history, that we do have struggles to connect and have those relationships together. And so for me, breaking it down to things that are easy, things that I already enjoy. I really love sitting down and having tea with somebody, having some food together, and just talking for like hours is actually how I've been building up my relationship with my family. And also seeing like what Gerry's saying is like, it's not just people that you're related to that are like your, you know, given family, but also family that you connect to, like other than that. So for me, like Sarain and I met through work, obviously we're here together, but through our conversations and our relationship together, we feel more like sisters or cousins than anything else. And then also we were even able to break it down to that Sarain and her mom and my auntie have known each other for many, many years, and to think that our family extends far beyond just the people that we are related to by blood, and that we have like kin, we have family across everywhere that we go to. Even Gerry talking about being closer to Musqueam, and now he's part of like Musqueam family, and that's definitely what I relate to, because growing up outside of our community over in Nanusk and growing up here in East Van, there is its own community here where I had aunties and uncles that were looking out for me and taking care of me, that I'm not, you know, related to, but they were family. They treated me like family, and I could look to them up to them as family. And so I think not getting overwhelmed of like, because for me, I remember talking to a friend of like, how do I like bring my whole family together? How do I do this? You know, it's so big, right? And he was like, wow, you know, just one-on-one, you're one person, and just reaching out and connecting to one person at a time, and then just enjoying that time together. And you don't have to worry about taking on the burden of this huge, you know, like overwhelming prospect of like healing and connection, and just create it to like small moments of connection, because that's what made me feel good. And it made it real for me, because talking about this stuff can feel so broad, but to just say sitting down and eating breakfast at you know, at Denny's or something with one of my aunties a few years ago, that was, I still have that memory in my mind of that was a chance for me and her to connect. And then having like an opportunity to interview a different auntie, just sitting down together and eating Chinese food, because we really wanted Chinese food that night. And yeah, moments like that, that was really fun. And finding ways to connect like that, it's almost like kind of like making friends. Like, how do you make friends? You go up to them, you introduce yourself, you know, you find common things that you have in common, and just share some time together. And I've seen Sarain do a great example of that when we had the opportunity to visit New Hawk in Bella Coola. We saw an elder sitting at a table by himself, and I am so shy, I wasn't going to say anything. And Sarain was like, let's go eat dinner with him. And I was like, okay. She grabbed our plates, and we went over and sat down and introduced ourselves and said, hello, you know, we're just visiting from out of town. And then we found out that he was one of the hereditary chiefs there, and he had a ton of really cool like history to share with us, and some language as well to share with us. And it was a really, really beautiful memory. And it was just a sitting down and sharing some food together.
We do have 10 minutes left, but I wanted to thank you all again for sharing. I know that especially during this time when we can't gather in person, it's just so nice to reminisce about these times with our aunties and with our community, and the times that we have gathered, and all these lessons that we still have, and we'll still be here when we do have the opportunity to gather in physical space together. And Sarain, I really liked during your presentation when you were talking about the way that you're connecting with your nieces and nephews is just through the tools we have available. So Snapchat or like these games that we can play online. And I think that's like just a good reminder for myself personally to remember that it isn't just big moments that makes you an auntie or a community member or kin. It's the small moments where you're just checking in and showing up together. So I do want to allow time for all of you to have to ask a question to the audience or have a closing thought before we go away for lunch. We have an hour lunch break from 12 to 1. So if you three had a thought or a question or anything to close, this is your time.
I think I would just want to share that there is no bad way of being an auntie, that being an auntie is dependent, or an uncle is dependent on who you are as a person, and to not be afraid to try, because you might have people turn you away or say, I don't need help with that, go, they might dismiss you. And that's okay. That's their decision. That's their emotion. And you don't have to own that. And you can just continue to try and put yourself out there and make mistakes, because I've learned such good, valuable lessons from aunties that I've seen struggle, that I've seen make mistakes and say something that they shouldn't have said, or, do something like that. And I learned from it. And so I would say, don't be afraid. And you don't have to look a certain way. You don't have to act a certain way. You don't have to be anything to be yourself or to be who you are to your community, whether that community be, with family members or completely new people in a different setting. It's totally okay. And just try and step in and learn.
I encourage you guys all to start a little Snapchat game or something with your niece or nephew. Oh, Roblox, that's a big one. I know that one's huge. And just play for like an hour, even if it's just, or maybe even if it's just 30 minutes. Like, I know it makes a huge impact, because every time when I see my nieces and nephews, they light up because they have that shared connection. So I mean, do it how you want to do it, whether that be even just reaching out to your auntie and uncle just to say, hey, like, I acknowledge you, I love you, I'm still here. And that goes a long way.
Okay, and I'd like to add that, if an uncle corrects you, don't get hurt feelings. Because when they correct you, it's because they care for you, and they want you to do good. And they don't want you to embarrass yourself, so they're going to correct you and say, don't do it that way, nephew or niece. I can remember my uncle telling me, nephew, you fly with the crows, you're going to get shot. Because I was hanging around with people that were drinking and stealing when I was a young teenager. Of course, I didn't listen to him, and I ended up getting arrested, and get thrown in a can or in the jail. But I listened after that, so if they're going to correct you, don't have hurt feelings from it. It could hurt. I'm not saying don't have hurt. All of us can get hurt feelings from being corrected. But just say, thank you, uncle or auntie. Okay, just thank them. And when your uncle or auntie does something for you, you sort of put a mark on your brain. Say, I'm going to do something for uncle or auntie. I want to pay them back for this moment. And then when you do that, you say, and they'll say, hi, why are you doing that? Oh, so, uncle, remember last year you done this for me? I just wanted to return that kindness. Because that's the way our people were. They would, as soon as somebody does something for you, you mark it and say, I'm going to do something for them. And it might be 2 or 3 years down the road or something, One of my aunties told me when you give away good things, it goes around in a circle and come back to you. And sometimes it's a big circle, maybe 10 years before it gets back to you. But don't worry, it'll come back to you. So one of the tough things as an uncle, I talked to nephews that made bad mistakes. And I have to try and find a way where they don't feel worse, because they're feeling bad already. So, so I don't want them to feel any worse than they are, but at the same time, I want to let them know what you've done is wrong. You shouldn't do that. And, but always, I think when we use the word nephew, when I correct my nephews and I say, hey, nephew, it's a different connection then. I think it opens the door for correcting people when you start to use that term nephew and niece. I've talked to nephews and say, hey, nephew, we're doing some serious work here. We're saving lives and stuff like that. Or we want granny or grandpa to have a good event because sometimes they have naming ceremony or something. And we work with the uncles and the aunties to help that grandparent have a good event, and it's so good to have uncles and aunties guide you. So when you need help, go say, hey, uncle, I don't understand this. Don't be afraid to do that. And if they don't know, don't blame them. To say, oh, thank you. They might tell you where else to go look for an answer. But try to keep the communication open by listening and talking, returning goodness, giving goodness. And teach people that too. Teach your nephew. Oh yeah, nephew. Teach him about what goes around comes around. You give out goodness, goodness comes back to you. Yeah.